historic pub is a good start to any walk, don't you think? Although this pub is slightly less historic than it may appear at first glance. So the city of York here stands on the site of a pub that was built in 1430, or I think there were numerous pubs on this site here. This building is actually from the 1920s, but it's a really beautiful bar to go into. Apparently Dylan Thomas celebrated it in a poem, wrote an ode to it that was lost for many years. All right, now I'm pretty sure that once upon a time, quite a long time ago, when I used to walk along this way and stop for a pint here occasionally, and someone told me that although this is a modern building, a 1920s building, that some of the cellar downstairs, and there is a lovely bar, basement bar, that the stonework there dates from the original medieval inn. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe someone will tell us in the comments below. I'm aware we haven't done the normal intro. We'll do that in a minute around the corner when we get off of High Holborn here. But this is a great pub. It's a Sam Smith's pub. Sam Smith's pubs seem to always be really lovely pubs in really interesting buildings. Highly recommend it. If you're a Londoner, you already know this. If you're a visitor to London, find the Sam Smith's pubs and you can't go far wrong. I just want to find the turning off of High Holborn into Gray's Inn, and then I'll introduce the walk today. A little bit unconventional, isn't it, to do it this way, but hey. So here we go. Forward Place, I think, takes us into Gray's Inn. So today we're just going to take a gentle stroll actually through some of my favourite streets in London, starting down here at Chancery Lane, and we're going to wander up along Gray's Inn Road and then taking some of the streets on the east side of Bloomsbury. Made recent videos, recent, a year and a half ago, walking around Bloomsbury, and a couple 5 or 6 years ago, but I've never really covered this area around Coram's Fields, Lamb Conduit Street. Really, I used to walk around here a lot, but most nights of the week, 20 odd years ago, when I lived at the Angel and worked at the South Bank. And I really love these streets around here. And there's some great stories. And it looks like the gate into Gray's Inn, though, is shut. Not that surprising, because it is a Sunday. I think there is an entrance on Gray's Inn Road, which should be open, because I've walked through there on a Sunday before. This video really complements the Little Italy video from a year ago, exactly a year ago, and the other recent videos around, Fleet Street, Clerkenwell, that kind of area, the River Fleet. So kind of, you can put them together to form a little composite picture of this eastern side of central London. Well, we'll try the more obvious entrance here. It's an older looking entrance to Gray's Inn. I avoided this, I guess, because there's a beadle down there, so I may not be allowed in, but let's go, let's wait and see. Isn't it magnificent? This is a really amazing location. All the Inns of Court are. They've all got their own slightly different character as well. I can't see an inscription on this statue here, but my guess is that it's the founder of Gray's Inn, who had a rather Norman-sounding name. His surname was de Grey, and this was founded in the 14th century, many, many, many moons ago, to use a massive understatement. So this is one of the 4 Inns of Court, medieval areas of legal chambers. And they're still legal chambers to this day. I think a lot of them have accommodation for retired lawyers and judges, but they're certainly mostly offices of barristers and lawyers. And the others being the Middle Temple, the Inner Temple, and Lincoln's Inn. And I think, although this was a very important place in the Elizabethan period, where Francis Bacon, the great essayist, was based, it kind of declined in importance once the Royal Courts of Justice opened down there on the Strand in it. This was the furthest away, so it waned a little bit, but its fortunes did revive. It's just a really lovely spot actually, and like the others, it's used quite a bit for filming because of its really beautifully preserved Georgian architecture. through here, the field actually through here is really lovely feature. I have been in there though, so I don't know. Oh, there you go. It's only open to the public Monday to Friday between 12 and 2:30. It's a really wonderful little spot in here though. And there's this great walk that goes around the edge of Gray's Inn, around the edge of the field. This is particularly good to walk around here at night. That's when I used to like walking around here. And it's lit by these lamps, which are the original Victorian gas lamp stands, I think, but obviously they're electric now. The gate is locked here. I think I confused it with the street on the other side of the wall, just over there. So that's where I need to get to now. It is fascinating that we still have these kind of gated medieval enclaves in the centre of London, and particularly the fact that they're dedicated to just one profession, the legal profession. And when you see it like that, there's Theobald's Road on the other side of that gate, a busy thoroughfare, but it's locked, it's kept outside. This is a secluded, occluded little world in here with lawyers kind of ferreting away, working away over their bundles. So I kind of love it. 1825, this building. Back out onto High Holborn, and then we'll turn right and find our way into Jockey's Field. That's a fine bit of modernist architecture there, isn't it? Lincoln House here on High Holborn. It's a beautiful old slab. Now we turn right off High Holborn along Brownlow Street. Look, it's a beautiful slice of old London here, isn't there? So this is another little pocket of Charles Dickens' London, one of the many areas of central London and beyond associated with Dickens. But he writes about, or he mentions, Gray's Inn, and he lives just over the road in Doughty Street. So that's where the Dickens Museum is. In fact, I've never been to the Dickens Museum, and I have a feeling that today won't be the day. But the other person I associate with this part of London is the great author and illustrator Geoffrey Fletcher, most famous for his book The London Nobody Knows. And he was really interested in the small features of what he saw as the sort of disappearing features of Victorian London and older. And I think he used to write for the London Evening News, and he would do these really beautiful illustrations. You can find his books and his pamphlets online. And he drew that gas lamp there behind me. I'm pretty sure it's this one, because I remember looking it up. And you can see, look, it's a gas lamp and a water pump combined. What a majestic thing. So here is Jockey's Fields, besides Gray's Inn, but I think actually we'll walk along the adjacent street. When you see all these gas lamps here, it's interesting to think the fact that, you know, people had the job of walking around at night and lighting these lamps one by one. It would have been a real thing to notice that disappear with the coming of electric lighting. I wonder what the old lamp lighters did for a living once we switched over to electric lighting. I wonder what they transitioned into. Anybody know? Interested to hear. Somebody will know the answer to that question. I don't think they probably en masse all went to work in the electricity power stations and stuff. And now we'll go up here, the very kind of elegant and grand Bedford Row. These streets here, Bedford Row, Doughty Street over the road there, when they were kind of developed in the 19th century, they really became some of the most desirable streets in London. Because you have to remember, areas like Belgravia didn't really become very kind of shishi and associated with the way that they are today until around, well, it was around the same time, to be honest with you, but they weren't established as kind of areas of ground residences, whereas these places here behind me, this is where the fashionable and the wealthy people wanted to come and live, to have a house here on the edge of the city, between the city and the West End. We'll just cross Theobald's Road and we're going to kind of explore these streets here just to the north of Theobald's Road. I love this area over here so much. Love the old borough signage. Look, Borough of Holborn. Holborn was once its own borough before it got absorbed into Camden. And we'll just go along Great James Street before turning to the right. These little streets around here are so quiet at the weekend. It's a real delight to walk around here on a Sunday afternoon. These houses would have had whole teams of servants in each one of them to help maintain them. You look at those lovely doors there with the steps. They'd have been down there on their hands and knees with a bucket and a brush, scrubbing them clean every day, polishing the brasses on the doors. I always feel you can hear the horse and carriages clattering along the streets here, the sound of the hooves on the pavement. This is where Dorothy Sayers, author of detective novels, lived between 1921 and 1929. It's got that feel about it, hasn't it? We're going to turn here into Northington Street and explore some of the little muses that run off it either side. We've got Cockpit Yard down here. I think it's the headquarters of an arts organisation now, I believe. And here we've got John's Mews, which adjoins later up to Roger Street. So you've got John's, Roger. Okay, my name is Rogers, but I'm having it. So I feel like there's a particularly personal alignment around here. And I think we ascertained when we were walking, was it walking the Tyburn, that a mews is where falcons and hawks were kept, hunting hawks and stuff. I don't know the association between the name and the activity, but of course in reality when these were built they would have been stables, so the name must have just been a legacy. And this is a interesting looking building, isn't it? I don't know what it is. It's one of those where I'm going to have to look it up when I get home. This pub here, the Lady Ottoline, I've got quite a strong feeling it hasn't always been called that. I don't remember that from the past. That's another one for the comments. I wonder what that was called once upon a time. Oh, actually, look, it tells us here it was the King's Arms. And there's this really lovely mural here. It says, I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. What a lovely thing to have painted on the wall. I think this is one of the things that makes this area so special, is you've got this beautiful old building here, which I'd say is at least Victorian, and then next to it, you've got this really beautiful Art Deco building as well. Every building along here, more or less, is really interesting. And the topography here is really interesting, isn't it? Because you can see we're clearly going downhill towards the Fleet Valley, the River Fleet. Phoenix Place is just behind those buildings, where the River Fleet is gurgling away beneath the pavement. There are a number of springs that rose around this ground that we'll talk about more when we get round to Lamb's Conduit Street. So we'll just go down here along King's Mews. This is Brownlow Mews. And now we turn into Doughty Street. This is one of the grand streets of Bloomsbury, once one of its most sought after addresses. Doughty Street was developed between the 1790s and the 1820s by a fellow called Doughty, who very humbly named it after himself. I'm pretty sure the Spectator magazine has its headquarters in Doughty Street, which is where Boris Johnson got up to all manner of no good with various members of staff. I'm sure you can imagine what I'm talking about here. And I think over the road here we have the Dickens Museum. Yes, we do. Never been in there, and I don't think today is going to be the first time either. And there at number 48 Doughty Street is the Charles Dickens Museum, where Charles Dickens actually lived. It's interesting. It's a measure, I guess, of how successful that he became financially, that he was able to live in this street here after he experienced such terrible poverty as a child and was working in a factory at the age of 12, a blacking factory down in Southwark. We'll be going there soon. What's more interesting to me though is that Ed Glynner mentions that George Orwell's character Gordon Comstock rents a room in Doughty Street in the novel Keep the Aspidistra Flying. That was one of my favourite books, Keep the Aspidistra Flying. I loved that book, and the character Gordon Comstock, the struggling wannabe poet. So obviously for a character like Comstock to have lived here, it must have gone down a bit in its social rankings by the sort of 1930s, 1920s, 1930s. And this is a place I've always been very curious about. Goodenough College. William Goodenough, I think, was the founder, and it was funded by a number of very sort of prominent wealthy Londoners to provide residential postgraduate education to people of talent, I guess, who might have had financial need for assistance. And it's still in operation today. I think I've just read on their website there's like 700 postgraduates and their families resident here. Interesting place, tucked away here in Guildford Street. Here's another really fabulous little mews, Doughty Mews. There's an interesting little pub down here called The Duke. I remember going in there one night about 16, 17 years ago. It's a really curious little pub. Actually, if I remember right, I think there's a really interesting society based down here. Let's go have a quick look. So we're in the orbit of Great Ormond Street Hospital, the famous Great Ormond Street Hospital, Children's Hospital. And a lot of the buildings around here you sort of see are associated with the hospital or something to do with sick children. But I seem to remember coming across the Explorers Society down here. I might be wrong, I might have got the wrong news, but it'd be great to find it. Wow, look at this place, it's amazing. Yeah, here it is, look, the Egypt Exploration Society. Isn't that fantastic? It says, or just Tutankhamun. That's wonderful. You have to give them credit for that one. And that's the Duke pub there on Roger Street, which is, as I mentioned, very near John Street. Actually, we'll have a look at the lovely kind of modernist Art Deco. There you go, I'm going to forever conflate those two words. Next to it, really wonderful block of flats. Aren't these flats really wonderful? Very simple with the building materials, just with the brick, but the beautiful curves and the straight lines. They're a real marvel, aren't they? Right, I'm going to show you a place. I can't take you there, we're not allowed in. I'm going to show you a place where I used to spend an awful lot of time, particularly on a Sunday. It's just over the road here, but you'll see in a minute. Very fond memories. Anyway, I'll stop talking about it and I'll actually show it to you. You'll see why we can't go in when we turn the camera around, basically. So here we have Coram's Fields, which is today a children's playground. You can only go in there if you're an adult if you've got a child with you. So the only adults allowed in there have got children with them. And it's a really wonderful place. They've got animals in there that the children can feed and can pet. They've got an amazing adventure playground. My kids always called it the animal park. And we spent many, many hours in here. Whole days in here I spent with my eldest son, Oliver. And it was originally the Foundling Museum, established by Thomas Coram in the 18th century as a place for orphaned children. You can imagine at that period of time it was very, very busy. I think I read that at one point there was 1,000 children a year being admitted here, and the alcoves around the gate lodge is where mothers would leave their babies and ring the bell before running off. In fact, they still do ring the bell at closing time and that's when Oliver used to run off to the far corner of the park. It's amazing that we never ever got locked in there once. This is one of the great London pubs here, the Lamb in Lamb's Conduit Street, and it's got a really wonderful kind of quirky interior. It's got those little screens that you could, if you stood at the bar, you could turn the screens around and you could have a little bit of kind of seclusion, a bit of time to yourself at the bar. I think they're called snob screens. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it might be to do with that delineation between the saloon bar and the public bar. But it's a really great pub, that. So Lamb's Conduit Street is very literally named. It's named after a fellow called Lamb, who commercialised a conduit here, a spring head. He built a conduit to take water from the spring here down into the City of London in the 16th century. Pretty good venture at that time. Unfortunately for Mr. Lamb, is that the New River Company got their stuff together around, I think it was around 1612, 1617, and built the New River, which is still feeding water into London to this very day. So that made little old Lamb's Conduit here a lot less kind of viable, but I think it carried on for a while, and by the 19th century it was in disuse. However, they did find the actual conduit, again, the conduit head, the spring head. And there's a plaque on the wall behind me, so let's go and have a look. There we go, look. It says here, Lamb's Conduit, the property of the City of London. This pump is erected for the benefit of the public. Public with a K. I don't know if it comes out. I think the light might not help. And this is an interesting thing. It's called the People's Supermarket, and it's really good to see it going strong. It is a community-owned supermarket, and it's been here for quite a few years. I think I last came to this supermarket in 2008, 2009, so it's been going for at least 10, 11 years. It's really lovely to meet a family back there who watched my videos, said they've watched them all, which is, well, I am so grateful. I'm bowled over. It was really lovely to meet you. Sorry I didn't ask your names. It was really lovely because one of the family members had lived in Little Italy, and that was really great. So you said you'd be watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. And in fact, I think actually I will end the video here because it's now pitch black and it's a little bit difficult to pick out the features in the darkness, because I wanted to go into Queen's Square, and there's quite a few buildings around Queen's Square to look at, and it is inky black now. It's inky dark. So I think we'll save that for another day. There's a few other little stories I want to pick up around Bloomsbury that I haven't done before, so we'll do that another day. I've really enjoyed this. I've loved coming back here. Coram's Fields for me is obviously one of my really special places. Particularly with my eldest son, we used to spend entire days in Coram's Field playing. And like I say, he'd always run off with the crisps. So I used to give him a bag of crisps to bribe him to get into the pram. And he'd hear that bell, he'd take the crisps and he would run. And I think, oh no, I've got nothing to bribe him with to get him back in the pram now. Happy memories. He's at university now. Shows you how time changes. You take care, have a great week. And as I always like to say, I look forward to seeing you on the next walk.
John Rogers.
Hey, wherever that may be. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks very much.
Great,
Cheers. Thank you. There you go. See you on the next walk, wherever that may be.